Okay, I emulated the result. So if I call this URL, this URL, this response will land. So I'm going to mock it. Mark this for to find out why the API key going wrong. Maybe it's a certificate, fingerprint. There are various things are there. So now I'm calling the location, going to DDMS, going to push the location. I think I've got a result. So the whole JSON response has been is coming. So depending on the URL you're calling, you will get the result. If it is HTTP GET this way, if it is HTTP POST, that will also be a different one. I have some example on HTTP POST as well, but typically HTTP GET is considered less secure, whereas the HTTP POST is considered a slightly secure one. So most of your enterprise application may be calling through the HTTP post only. So that example also I'll write, but right now we'll see how to convert the incoming JSON into a readable format. So my JSON is coming here. Out of this try catches because it is a conversion process. So let us see the incoming response, assuming it is correct. So it has a object called results. In that, one of an object is called formatted address. So this is what I am interested. Let me try to parse it. Okay. So let me verify one more time. That has one array also, but I'm not interested on array. I'm interested on an object called formatted address. Ita. So let me try to print the address. If all goes well, I should get the address. So first I'm getting the JSON object called result. From the result I am reading an object called formatted address because it is a string value it is returning. So I'm safely calling the string. Let me try. The JSON format itself is wrong, mean it will throw an error. I'm suspecting that as well. I'm not sure. I think here it is. Syntax error. Somewhere the comma I think I may have forgotten because Google gave me a very generic one. I'll do one thing, I'll convert as a readable one. Okay. I'll proceed. So result object is going to give me a response. So it has a JSON object that has a string called formatted address. I'll make it simplified because it's a slightly complex one. Let me push it. Let me push the location again. Again some format errors. Special characters. That's a problem of copy pasting. That's what I don't want to emulate anything, but unfortunately you have to depend on this kind of emulation. You need to hard code the JSON and put it inside your asset directory, and that's the only way we can debug as far as the provisions given to us. Still errors. Or results, it's not result. I think I've got it. So I can decode the address from the response string which is coming. So this particular thing I wanted to display here in the notification. Remember, this could be any URL. Since Google restricted us using say API key, I don't know what went wrong with my API key, but in fact I have added everything correct. but I wanted to verify whether they are expecting HTTP post or sometimes. So we will test that into maybe in another session. So right now, when I call HTTP request and when I make HTTP request, I get HTTP response. That response comes as a JSON format, and that JSON I am decoding and or maybe parsing it and retrieve the formatted address which is available as one of refresh it. So this is a simple JSON format. It has an object called results. Inside the results there is one more object called formatted address, which is of type string. So after getting the results object, when I call a string value which is coming with a key called formatted address, I will get back the response. I mean the particular read formatted address. So if it is complex, accordingly you need to read it. So that's the only thing. It has to be a valid JSON format. Remember the last time it did not work because I simply copy pasted, which may have taken the special characters, and of course it is also incomplete. If you notice, that's the reason my copy paste did not work, because there may be some sort of nested curly brace may be present which I did not notice. So once I clean up, if the JSON comes in a specific unclean format, your Android or typically the Java can easily parse it and extract the information from that string. For this to achieve, I slightly made a roundabout way, but which helps me to abstract the async task, because async task is not defined in this class, whereas the my web service, it is nothing but abstracted. You may consider that as an abstraction layer or whatever way. So inside I have a class. That class has a async task as a parent class, and which calls something in the background. It makes HTTP client, or it makes HTTP request and gets a HTTP response. In fact, this is not mandatory, but which I used it for debugging. You can directly give the URL, so it will still work. So you have to make HTTP request using the default HTTP client available. When HTTP is executed, you will start getting the response. That response is held in the buffered reader. As the streams land, I am reading them line by line and append it to a string builder. That string builder finally made as a string, and it is referenced to a result object. So that is being returned when do background method fully executed, and that it will call on post execute method. So that will transfer the particular result to another method. One second, instead of because cannot be, because I have to make that also abstract. Let me try that. Okay. For safer side, I made that as abstract. So any method or any class which is extended, which is having a single abstract method, is considered as the whole class as a abstract method, so it will force it to get implemented. If you want to force it to get force a method to get implemented wherever the parent class is called, you may make it as a abstract. But when you have abstract method, even a single abstract method on board, the whole class becomes abstract class. So this abstract class cannot independently work, so at max it can be working with the any class where it gets implemented. So now I can do super alone is not allowed, but the rest is allowed. This way also you can make it. So this particular class is made as abstract class. Whomever want async task can extend from this class. this class is already implemented inside a service, so that's the reason I don't need to make that as a service. So when I extend this particular class, it automatically becomes service. So you don't need to define this in manifest because this is not independently going to work. Any class which is going to independently work as a service should have a declaration in the manifest. So that's the reason we already have a my location service defined in the manifest, because this particular class is going to work as a service, whereas this particular part is abstracted. So it has a abstract method. When async task gets completed, it calls a abstract method. Wherever this method has got implemented, will receive the value. So naturally, this is a slightly different design pattern than an interface. Whereas the interface had a keyword called implements, there the abstract method got implemented. Whereas in this case, the abstract method is getting implemented using inheritance. So 2 or 3 more way also possible. But if you have a further thing to get implemented, you do not have any other way than using other interface to have that implemented, because in Java only single, for example, multiple inheritance is not allowed in Java, whereas other object oriented programming language such as C++, you can have multiple inheritance can also be implemented. So in this case, this inherited class had an abstract method which got implemented, but this method, since it get implemented, it will give me the result of the async task after executing thing from the background. So I can safely call my web request and create a URL and retrieve the response. When the response is ready, automatically this method will be called with the result incoming. That result you can use it for parsing your incoming JSON and display wherever it is necessary. For example, I don't want to do one thing. I'll move the notification guy here. So whenever the result is ready, the address will be displayed in a notification bar. You notice the incoming address is being displayed in a notification. So it means in the background it converted the latitude longitude and send the latitude longitude to a HTTP client, or through HTTP client it made a HTTP request and retrieved the result, and when the result is available it is displaying in notification. So I just emulated the result because maybe my certificate fingerprint values are wrong, that's why my API key did not accept, or maybe it doesn't accept on emulators, which I'm not very sure. But in fact, I could successfully make a HTTP call which even retrieved a JSON response. That JSON response, I'm using it to parse it and retrieve the value. The next example, I will make a HTTP post instead of HTTP request. This time I'm going to call from my own web service instead of this one. So based on the request response, whatever value you pass, you will get the response. So this is a small idea. So how to make a HTTP request. So HTTP request is something, get access to a HTTP client, default HTTP client, and make a object called HTTP get or post and tie up them and make HTTP client execute, receive the stream and parse the stream and append it to a string builder and display wherever it is necessary. This particular scenario we will again see maybe in file writing as well again. So how to, instead of displaying, is there any way I can save the content into a SD card? for example, a photo is being downloaded, uh, input stream reader, for example, the stream will come, we can create a file system, store the stream and download the particular content. So the result may be a bitmap or could be anything. So how to save them in SD card also we'll see, but the same block which is going to be repeated. So file handling, or small example we will see them. So how Java is capable of handling files. Remember, it is all Java part, it is not nothing to do with Android, because Java is already having the capability to read, write, append the file. So using that we are going to do. Right now we did not use the file system, instead we are using the object to store the incoming string or stream. The only condition, the incoming stream should not be more than 2 MB of size. That's a restriction made by Android. So that input stream or any stream which is coming should not overload the object or Java objects. So anything goes beyond 2 MB, it is advisable to create a file system, save it in SD card. So most of the JSON response or JSON payloads, we call them JSON payloads because the result contains some sort of object or key value pairs. So we call them as a JSON payload which is coming with the values. That JSON payload, mostly if you, the developer who is working in the backend, 100% may be knowing it, the JSON payload size would not be of more than 2 MB. So they'll anyway give you a lesser size only. If anything goes beyond, you should find some other workaround to hold the values. So what we have seen is a small example on JSON, HTTP GET. Unfortunately, you cannot test it because of the restriction. I'll try to put it in a asset folder. I slightly modify the code so that you can test it. I'll do it. I'll try to do it because that's where I have a little confusion over, because it should be quite dynamic for your projects which I'm assigned. So the URL what I am trying to give for your emulation, for your testing purpose, this may be your local assets folder. So I'll test it. If that works, I'll make all the exercises accordingly. But in a real scenario, make sure that is a valid URL. So in your application development, it would be a valid URL. Okay. So rest of the example we will see in the afternoon after the lunch break.